Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever, and today I'm finally getting around to doing my review of Extendar. That's right, this figure is from Masters of the Universe Origins and isn't available at retail in any capacity. Instead, he was an exclusive on the Mattel Creations website. Kind of like the days of Matty Collector back in the 2010s when Mattel used to offer these figures direct to consumer. This appears to be how Mattel will offer pretty much all the rest of the original classic figures from the retro line. And retail seems to be reserved more for exclusives, for Filmation series figures, as well as the Turtles of Grayskull. Extendar is definitely one of the figures that collectors have been waiting for and that they've not got to do, and I can't wait to tell you all about the figure. So before we begin, be sure to like the video if you can, that really does help the channel grow. And of course, be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss all the other Masters of the Universe reviews and news that I have coming on the channel. So with all that out of the way, let's begin. You can see that it's just the regular direct-to-consumer packaging with the actual slipcase right there so that the card back can remain a mint, so that's awesome. And on the back, we get a beautiful illustration of Extendar. You can see Dragstore back there, so that looks really great. Don't forget that he does come with a superb little mini comic here, and I love the artwork in this one. Absolutely love the story because it functions as a direct sequel to the old mini comic that introduced Extendar, and it even features a mysterious new character at the end, so who knows what it's going to be. Personally, I think it might be a character that reuses a lot of the parts of Extendar, and that they'll be offering them on Mattel Creations, but that's just my guess. Alright, as for the figure itself, you can see that I have him fighting a pack. Would it be a pack of snake men right here? And I just thought that would be a fun way to homage the original card back of the figure where he was fighting a group of snake men. Of course, Extendar was a later figure in the line. He came out in '85, and at that time, indeed, the Masters were definitely snake men focused, and Origins itself has been very snake men focused, as we all know. And that's fine by me because these snake men are my favorite faction. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Mr. Extendar here. I think that this figure is one of those that maybe isn't as near and dear to the hearts of some of the older Masters of the Universe collectors because he came later in the line. This is one of those guys that maybe you had him, maybe you didn't, depending on when you got into the line. For me, I wasn't even born yet. So being a child of the late 80s and early 90s, I'm seeing him in retrospect. But I'm curious to know down in the comments below if this is somebody who you did have in your collection or were you already out of Masters by the time this guy came out. Either way, I've always liked Extendar. Never necessarily one of my favorites of the Masters figures, but I've always appreciated the design. The only version of this guy I've ever had is the Masters of the Universe Classics version, and of course we're going to be doing an in-depth comparison with that figure later. To begin, we're just going to look at Extendar in his base mode, as I would call it right here. Just his standard regular mode that you'll see the figure in mostly. And this is him without any of the extending pieces, without any of the action features going or anything like that. And you can see that, you know, he is the same size as a regular MOTU figure pretty much. Like you take Snake Face right here and it's about the same kind of deal. But what I really like about this guy aesthetically is the chunkiness of him. I mean, he really is wide, broad, kind of feels substantial in your hands, much heavier than typically a He-Man figure or other Master figures would actually be. So I actually think that's quite nice. To me, a whole lot of the identity of Masters of the Universe is in that kind of feel of the figures, and this does a really good job of representing that. The other thing is I really think it's interesting the decisions that they made about doing the pearlescent plastic. Now this effect, which I think could best be described as a marbleized effect right here on the plastic, I think it's controversial, and I've seen different people talk about it, and I'll give you my 2 cents about it here in a second. But I just want you to see what the process is. You can see the plastic is kind of swirly and has these marks all in it, and that's to give it that shiny, almost metallic look without having to do vac metal. And as much as we all love vac metallization, it's not really appropriate for joints that rub against each other because it flakes off, and there's not a lot of good solutions to that. I don't know, I'm of two minds about this. Personally, I think that it looks really good from a distance. So say for instance, you know, if he's just in your display, the light's hitting him just right and everything, I think it's a great look. And it does a good job of making it seem silvery and kind of shiny and metallic. The other thing, though, that I'll say is that some of these swirls can be a little distracting. Say, for instance, you have these lines up here, which tend to, in certain light, actually look like markings or striations right there. that does kind of, I don't know, there's something a little weird about it, almost like Wolverine's tiger stripes that he has on his yellow costume. And then up here, this is the most distracting thing of all. You have this, which if you didn't know any better, you would swear that the plastic up here was about to break because of these lines. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's a crack forming. No, that's perfectly smooth. That is just where the plastic did the funny swirling. I've seen some people that has, you know, the same kind of thing up here on the grill or the face grill or guard or whatever you want to call it. And I've seen some people's look better than mine, and I've seen plenty of people's look worse, and a lot of people look exactly like mine. To me, it's not a very big deal because it's not a break in the plastic, but it still is distracting. So it is one little visual hiccup, I think, that they have. I think they did a really good job with the gold plastic that they used. Anybody who collects figures knows a lot of the time that gold plastic syndrome is a real thing, and that means it can crack and do weird things over time. I really do like this mix that they've come up with. It feels sturdy, it looks really good without looking too mustardy, which is, you know, kind of a concern with a lot of this stuff. But I really do think it looks good overall. As for the sculpting on the figure, I really love the musculature that they have going here. It looks like a giant muscle suit that he's wearing. His whole aesthetic is that of more of a medieval knight, and his whole attitude and personality is styled around that in the mini comic. Other than that, I really like the addition of the red on the belt, of course, and the little ornament on the front. I love the shoulder pads, and of course everything continues around to the back without any of the bolts painted, unfortunately. To have a look at the head, we do need to go ahead and engage one of the action features. And you can see that his neck extends out, and you see his robotic kind of looking head. Now keep in mind, Extendar isn't necessarily a robot, but this is kind of his metal, kind of armored face, and I think it looks really cool. It reminds me of something, I'm not sure what it is, probably something from some kind of Art Deco design work or statue. It's kind of like the face of a statue you might see in Batman the Animated Series or something, but I really do like it. It's very true to the original. I like the little almost breathing apparatus thing, and I think the figure looks best when it's extended over the neck guard like that. I think you lose quite a bit when you put this like way down here and you can't see much of the face. It would be a little different if you could see the eyes more clearly through there, but you just can't. So I'm always pretty much going to have the head extended above like this because I think you lose the personality of the figure if you don't. I do like how so many of the pieces are completely original. This is a figure that does not have a lot of reuse at all with it. As a matter of fact, I believe that every single piece on this figure is a 100% brand new tool. Of course, you can correct me down below in the comments if you need to, but I'm pretty sure that this is all brand new. So this was not an easy figure or a cheap figure for Mattel to make, so I definitely understand the aim in the mini comic to maybe create a new evil character that would reuse a bunch of this stuff. And I hope that that turns out well. I'd really like to see what they come up with. Let's go ahead and talk real quick about the accessory. There's only one, so I don't think it'll take very long, and it's the shield. You can see that it can clamp to his arm like any of the other shields in the line, but let's look at the accessory more closely. Basically, Extendar, he doesn't have much in the way of a big accessory or anything like that. Instead, you have a shield that can open up a couple of different ways, and I guess in a way you can say that his shield also extends out, so it kind of continues the motif of that character. And you can see that it unfolds these kind of leaflets right here on the front. On the inside of the shield, you can see circuitry and things, and you can see a little hidden peace sign. And the peace sign isn't just there. We'll talk about another peace sign you can find later on. So I really like that. It's kind of like an origami thing almost. But you can see that you can extend it out, way out like this. I think it goes well with the idea of the character. And it still allows you to hold it in different ways, so he can kind of use this as a weapon too, I think. Which he'd have to, because Extendar doesn't actually come with any other weapons or anything like that. The Classics figure did, but we'll get into that. So looking at the action feature, which is of course the whole crux of this guy, it's the whole reason you get him. I really do enjoy what they've done here. In some ways it's very similar, but in some ways it's quite different than what they did in Masters of the Universe Classics. We'll go ahead and talk about the part that's pretty similar, at least in some ways. It's these little pieces right here. These little pieces are the things that you plug into the figure to extend out the arms and the legs. The thing is, though, that there's actual action features that work, unlike the Classics figure, for the waist and the head. So with those are not pieces that you just snap in or whatever for the neck and the waist. they're actually pieces that operate a whole lot like that original figure. One of the ways that Origins can always improve over classics, and typically it's very hard to do because a lot of those figures are immaculately sculpted and painted and were direct-to-consumer figures, Origins presents the opportunity to actually do the action features, which is not something that classics hardly ever got to do. As a matter of fact, it just wasn't that kind of line, so after a while, I remember years and years ago, we just stopped expecting it. Even figures like Dragstore didn't have his action feature, which is kind of funny because that was kind of the whole thing of the character. So you always had to simulate the action feature with pieces. Not so here because that actually extends. But it's kind of a melding of the two ideas because some of the things, really are action features and some of them aren't. Say, for instance, I can't really extend out the legs. Those have to be the pieces like you'd see in classics. I found that one of the most tremendously fun things to do with this guy is to put him on stairs, like say for instance the ones that lead up to the central tower in Eternia, because you can have one leg sort of extended and the other extended to the max. It kind of gives the figure a place to stand more securely while still having those limbs outstretched. So that's something I like to have fun with. I think it's kind of boring when all the limbs are extended out the exact same length, so I try to have fun with it. What I really like is that the extended curvature pieces right here allow you to do things that the original Extendar or the Classics version just couldn't do. Not only on the leg do you see that kind of curvature, but also up here on the elbow, you can see the same sort of thing happening. And I think that's terrific because typically that's the kind of thing you would only see in a cartoon or a comic book with Extendar. There probably will be a lot of questions in the comments, and I definitely want to answer this right now, about can these pieces, the extending pieces, are they compatible with the old Classics pieces? Say for instance, with the arm piece here, I can take this ball joint piece and I can click it. It does kind of hold in there, but the color is pretty different. You can see that it's quite a bit darker on the Classics version. And even if the connection doesn't go all the way in, you can totally do it if you like. And it doesn't look horrible or anything, but it's just slightly smaller and it's a little bit darker. It's something you can do. I'm not sure if you really would want to though. Speaking of those extendable pieces, you can see the peace symbol hidden back there on his neck. And I definitely just wanted to show you what it looked like if you used all 4 extendable pieces on one limb. As you can see, because 2 of them are the curved pieces that I started with, you definitely have quite a curve going up here for the arm, but I think it's really cool that you have this option. So you can totally do that, but that would be the only extendable limb that you would have access to like that. And here's quite a fun comparison between the Masters Universe Classics version and the Origins version. I think it's interesting because you can definitely tell that the Classics version is a lot more bronzy kind of looking for the gold there, and a lot more of a white pearl, whereas this is a lot more silver with a brighter gold. So it's like each one of them dulls down one color and brightens up another. This is largely just a preference thing. I would like to thank the website MOTU Variants for this neat little article and comparison about how, based on different parts of the world, or whatever part of the world that you lived in, that Extendar could look a little different. And I'm sure this had a lot to do with the plastic mixing and the availability of certain paints and things. And so you ended up with a whole lot of variations between Extendars about how that gold would look and how that pearlescent color would look. So really this is just, kind of a preference thing. For me, I like this color more over here. I just think it's nicer. I've always liked that pearl white. I think that the silver and all of that is fine, and it certainly matches some of the artwork a lot better. And I don't really have much of an issue either way. The one thing is the pearlescent plastic effect leads to some unintended weirdness over here, and they don't have that problem over here. But Classics was always a line that prioritized paint over plastic. However, looking at them, this one extends further. Of course, it's a figure line that's larger in scale. But what's interesting is this is a lot more functional, because you can see how much more natural using a curved piece here and a curved piece up here that I'm able to get the pose, and up here it looks very mechanical. It doesn't look very natural. And so it's probably base he's tipping over already. He's not very stable for one thing. Action figure technology has come a little ways. There's definitely good and bad about both. I think, sculpting, I think they both do exactly what they're supposed to and representing what they're supposed to. But I'd be lying if I said that I probably didn't overall prefer the look of the Masters Universe Classics figure. But I'm going to throw in a trump card right here And it's this, that the Classics figure actually comes with a combat accessory, not just a shield. And he comes with this javelin or lance. I don't know the difference between those two terms. Mine's a little warped because I've had it in storage, but you can see that it's great to have Extendar actually have a weapon that befits him. Whereas over here, even though in the mini comic they actually show him with the lance, which they should not have done if they weren't going to include it with this figure, he doesn't come with it. And it's such a shame, because I feel like he needs more than just the shield. Now, I will say that he was a pretty good deal, I thought, for the standard $20, not a deluxe or anything like that. He can do all this cool stuff. But I do think he needed a weapon. The good thing is you can actually donate this lance if you want to your new Origins version. And I will say that the grip is pretty snug on there, so just watch for that. But overall, I think it looks pretty nice. It is a little heavy for him, but I do think that it's a pretty good look and actually matches his tone of gold a little bit better than it does the Classics Extendar. I just shouldn't have to do that, though. He should have came with his own. I wouldn't have minded paying $25 or so to have gotten a lance and to have gotten more of the extendable pieces, because I feel like that we should have gotten double the amount of these extendable pieces, because it just would have made the figure 10 times more fun. I'm hoping that whenever they release that new evil version of Extendar, whatever they're going to do, I hope that he comes with the exact same color of extendable pieces, and that way we can use them as extras on this and be able to do some more crazy poses and things. You know, in the end, I really do feel like Extendar is such a fun addition to the line. I feel like he was priced right on Mattel Creations. He stayed up for a solid hour or two, and I think that's probably plenty of time for most of us to get a hold of him some way or another, so I feel like the quantities were about right. It'd be nice if he stayed up for more like a day or two rather than an hour or two, but still, I think as long as we set a little reminder on our phone or something, I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal to get a hold of these. There's things that the Classics version does a lot better, but keep in mind that Classics version was at a higher price point, and it was many years ago, so I think that Mattel has done well to figure out a way to release this guy at the $20 price point and still retain so many of the cool features. However, visually, he can't exactly stand up to that Classics version. However, this guy is a great recreation of that original figure. Swirly pearlescent plastic may not have worked out exactly as they hoped it would. It's really a relatively minor nitpick and an overall pretty solid figure. However, though, it is important to note that if it came down to which one I just wanted to pose around and play with, I guess it would be this Origins version over the Classics version. So one looks a little nicer, but the other one's a whole lot more fun, and this one certainly is a lot more fun and entertaining to play with. All right, guys, well, I certainly do appreciate you all watching today. I'm sorry it took me a little longer than usual to get around to reviewing this guy. Having a newborn is definitely a new adventure for me. And it certainly takes a whole lot more of my time, so it is a great effort to even try to film the reviews anymore, but that's okay because we're having a blast with her. So I do want to thank you all for the well wishes that you've given me and the excitement that you've expressed when I announced that she was on the way. And so mother and baby are doing very well. So thank you all so much. I do appreciate it. And keep it on the channel for more MOTU reviews. And with all that out of the way, God bless you and yours. And I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.